It's Friday morning. Your paycheck just landed in your bank account. You're standing in line at the office coffee shop, and Derek from IT is showing everyone his investing app. He's bought 47 different company stocks he found on Reddit. Gotta spread my money around, bro, he says while he's scrolling through red negative numbers. You nod politely, but honestly, just looking at it makes your head hurt. Meanwhile, Janet from accounting just put in her notice. She's 52, retiring to Portugal. When someone asked her secret, she laughed and said, I bought 4 boring funds 20 years ago and forgot about them. Derek owns 47 companies and he's stressed. Janet owns 4 funds and she's drinking wine in Lisbon. There's something most people miss about building wealth for early retirement, and it has nothing to do with finding the next hot stock. My name is Richard, and I spend way too much time studying compound interest and why some people retire in their 50s while others work until 70. Today, I'm showing you a 4 ETF portfolio that's simple enough to set up this weekend, and I guarantee some of what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you think about early retirement. I'm going to show you the exact 4 ETFs, the exact percentages, and the reasoning behind each one. So stick around to the end of the video so you don't miss the most important growth ETF. Before we jump into the exact 4 ETFs, there are 2 big categories most beginners are told they have to own that I actually don't include in this early retirement portfolio. Not because they're evil or useless, but because for most people watching this video, they add complexity without improving the results. The first one I don't recommend is bond ETFs. Let me tell you why really briefly. Bonds do have a role, especially later in life. But over the last decade, we've seen something most investors weren't prepared for: the bonds dropping at the same time as stocks. When interest rates spiked, many total bond funds went flat or negative for several years, right when people expected them to be the safe part of the portfolio. That doesn't mean bonds are broken forever. It just means if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or even early 50s, trying to retire early, tying up a big chunk of your money in slow growth bond funds can drag down your long-term compounding big time. The whole reason people buy bonds is to reduce their volatility so they don't panic during crashes. And that goal is completely valid. But in this strategy, instead of owning a big block of low return bonds, we're going to get that emotional safety in a smarter way through a dividend-focused equity ETF and a momentum ETF that historically have dropped less than pure growth in bad markets, while still giving you real upside over 10 to 20 years. Same psychological benefit, much better long-run growth potential if you have time before retirement. The second category I'm not using here is broad international stock ETFs. Decades ago, if you wanted exposure to Europe or emerging markets, you had to buy companies based there. Today, the largest US companies already earn a huge chunk of their revenue all over the world. People in Europe buy from Apple, drink Starbucks, shop at Costco, use Microsoft and Google. When you own a broad US index, you're already getting global revenue exposure baked in. On top of that, broad international funds have generally lagged US large cap stocks for a long time now. Could that change in the future? Absolutely. But if your main goal is to hit your freedom number as efficiently as possible, you don't need a separate international fund on top of a strong US core. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with owning some bonds or a little international if it helps you sleep at night. If you love having 10 to 20% abroad, keep it. If you're 5 years from retirement and want a small bond sleeve, that can make sense. But the 4 ETF portfolio I'm about to show you is designed for simplicity, growth, and emotional stability without relying on big bond positions or separate international funds. 4 funds, 4 different jobs, and none of them are extra complexity just because the textbook says so. Your first ETF is either VOO or SPYM. Both track the S&P 500, the 500 largest companies in the United States: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Nvidia. Historically, it's averaged 10 to 12% per year over long periods. So if you invested $500 a month starting at age 30 until age 55, you'd contribute $150,000. And with average market returns, that account would be worth about $712,000. You more than quadrupled your money by being boring and consistent. I knew a teacher who invested $300 a month into VOO starting at 32, just automatic investments. 23 years later, she retired at 55 with $1.1 million. The S&P 500 has survived every crash for decades and not only recovered, but reached new all-time highs. If a company does poorly, it gets kicked out. If a company thrives, it gets added in. The index automatically keeps you invested in what's working. This should be 35% of your portfolio. Even aggressive early retirement seekers keep at least 30 to 35% here because boring stability is what gets you to the finish line. When I first started investing, I thought the S&P 500 was for old people. I chased hot stocks. 2022 hit, and I lost 2 years of gains in 4 months. My buddy who just bought VOO was only down 18% and didn't panic. By 2024, he was at new highs. I was still recovering. Boring wins. Now, 35% in the S&P 500 gives you stability. But if you want to retire 10 to 15 years early, you need a growth engine. If you invested $10,000 10 years ago in the S&P 500, you'd have about $34,000 today. That same $10,000 in another fund would be worth $52,000 today. That's an $18,000 difference. Multiply that by 15 years of contributions, and you're talking about retiring 5 to 7 years earlier. The S&P 500 alone might get you to retirement by 65, but if you want to retire by 50 or 55, you need a portion pushing harder. Now, your second ETF is QQQM. It tracks the NASDAQ 100, the top 100 non-financial companies on the NASDAQ, heavily weighted toward technology. NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Meta, Tesla, Amazon. Historically, mid-teens annual returns. Since QQQM launched in 2020, it's returned roughly 15% per year on average. The NASDAQ 100 has crushed the S&P 500 over the past decade because technology drives the economy. My friend Chris is on his way to an early retirement. He started putting $400 a month into QQQM 3 years ago. That position is up over 60%. His $14,400 in contributions is now worth about $23,000. That extra growth lets him project retirement at 54 instead of 62. 8 years of his life bought back. If you want to retire early, you need to beat the market with part of your portfolio. Missing that growth means working longer. For aggressive early retirement seekers, keep 25 to 30% here. If you're more conservative, only 15 to 20%. The key is pairing this with your S&P 500 foundation. You get broad stability plus concentrated growth. I was projected to retire at 63 with just S&P 500 exposure. With 25% in QQQM, my retirement age dropped to 56. 7 years of my life from strategically adding one growth fund. Over a 15 to 20 year period, the NASDAQ 100 has been incredibly consistent at building wealth. The real risk is being 100% tech. But at 25 to 30% of your portfolio, you get growth without gambling. Now we've got stability and growth. But what happens when the market crashes? Because it will. This is where most early retirement plans fall apart. People panic, sell, lock in losses. Picture November 2022. The NASDAQ is down over 30%. You open your app and your portfolio is deep red. Your hands are shaking. This is where most people's early retirement dreams die. Not because the market crashed, but because they panic sold. What if there's a fund that during that crash only dropped about half as much and was paying you cash every quarter? This is the difference. It's not about avoiding crashes. It's about building a portfolio that doesn't force you to panic. If you're down 30% and sell, you need a 43% gain just to get back to even. Most people never recover. You need a part that keeps you calm, keeps paying you, and gives you courage to stay invested. So, your third ETF is SCHD, the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. High-quality dividend-paying companies. Pfizer, Coca-Cola, Verizon, Home Depot, Chevron. Boring but recession-resistant. SCHD yields about 3.5 to 4% in dividends. If you have $100,000 in this fund, you're getting paid $3,500 to $4,000 per year just for holding it. SCHD has been underperforming lately compared to tech funds, which makes it a great buying opportunity. 2022 crash, NASDAQ 100 dropped over 30%. S&P 500 fell 18%. SCHD dropped around 15%. half the damage of growth funds. But here's the magic. While you were down, SCHD was paying dividends every quarter. A guy I know had $80,000 in SCHD during that market crash. He collected about $3,000 in dividend payouts that year and used them to buy more shares when he hit the bottom. 2 years later, he's not just recovered, he's up huge because he had the emotional stability to stay invested. Staying invested through crashes is more important than picking perfect funds. SCHD gives you less volatility and more of a consistent income. That keeps you calm. And calm investors make rational decisions. Panicked investors sell at the bottom. So I recommend 20 to 25% here for early retirement seekers. If you're more conservative or already within 10 years of retirement, do 30 to 35%. In 2022, I was frustrated watching tech investors brag about gains. Then, 2022 hit, and my tech-heavy friends were losing their minds. I was down, but I still collected about $4,200 in dividends that year. That gave me permission to not panic, and by late 2023, I was back to all-time highs. My friends who sold stayed in cash, and now they're traumatized. Dividends aren't just about yield, they're crash insurance for your brain. When you're down 20% but collecting $300 a month in dividends, you're way less likely to panic sell. That reminder is often more valuable than the dividend itself. We've got our foundation with the S&P 500, growth with QQQM, and stability with SCHD, but there's one more fund that ties this together, a secret weapon that does something most investors have never heard of. What if there's a fund that gives you growth level returns, high teens annually, but when the market crashed, it only dropped a third as much as typical growth funds? Most portfolios force you to choose: go aggressive for growth and risk getting destroyed in crashes, or play it safe and accept slower wealth building. Aggressive portfolios can set you back a decade in one bad year. Conservative portfolios might not build wealth fast enough to retire early. What if you didn't have to choose? What if there's a fund that participated in bull market upside but protected you more in bear markets? That brings in your fourth ETF, SPMO, the Invesco S&P 500 Momentum ETF. SPMO holds about 100 companies from the S&P 500 that have the strongest upward momentum right now. Now, momentum is calculated based on which stocks performed best over the past 12 months. Then the fund rebalances every 6 months to stay current. Instead of holding all 500 companies equally, SPMO constantly rotates into what has momentum and out of what's losing steam. It automatically plays offense when markets rise and shifts to defense when things get shaky. You don't have to time anything. That's growth level performance. But in 2022, when the NASDAQ dropped over 30% and the S&P 500 fell 18%, SPMO only dropped around 10%. Growth level returns in good years, but only a 10% drop in one of the worst years in recent history. How? When momentum shifts, the fund shifts. In early 2022, as tech started breaking down, SPMO rotated into energy, healthcare, and consumer staples. Sectors that held up better. It wasn't predicting the future. It was following the momentum data. I know a woman, Rachel, who's 42, trying to retire by 52. She put 15% into SPMO 2 years ago. In 2024, when the market ripped higher, SPMO kept pace with the NASDAQ, up about 25%. But in choppy periods, SPMO stayed more stable than her growth funds. It's become her favorite holding because it gives her growth without heart attacks. Most portfolios make you choose between growth and protection. SPMO gives you both by systematically rotating into what's working. It's a smart, rules-based approach that removes emotion. You're getting the top 100 momentum stocks from the S&P 500, a mix of tech, financials, healthcare, consumer goods, energy, whatever sectors have momentum. The holdings change every 6 months, so you're always in what's current. I recommend 15 to 20% here. This is your performance multiplier. It smooths out your returns, boosts you in good times, protects you in bad times. When I first heard about momentum investing, I thought it was trend-chasing nonsense. Then I looked at the data. SPMO in 2020, up big. 2021, up big. 2022, down but way less than everything else. 2023, up big again. 2024, crushing it. The consistency blew me away. I started adding it about 18 months ago. I stress less. When the market gets choppy, SPMO usually holds up better than my growth funds. When the market rips higher, it's right there with them. I wish I'd known about this 10 years ago. You don't have to choose between growth and safety. With a momentum-based fund, you get growth in bull markets and relative protection in bear markets because the fund constantly adapts. That rotation is the difference between a portfolio that compounds wealth consistently and one that takes 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So here's your complete 4-fund portfolio. 35% SPYM or VOO, your S&P 500 foundation. 25% QQQM, your NASDAQ 100 growth engine. 25% SCHD, your dividend stocks for stability and income. 15% SPMO, your momentum performance multiplier. 4 funds, 4 distinct jobs, no overlap. Maximum efficiency. Now, general advice gets you general results. If you want a portfolio optimized for your specific goals, your risk tolerance, your timeline, that requires a custom approach. This is why I do one-on-one consultations. I'm taking new applications right now. We'll spend 55 minutes together digging into your exact situation, how much you've saved, how much you can contribute, when you want to retire, and we'll build a portfolio designed specifically for you. Let me give you 3 implementation tips that'll save you thousands of dollars and years of mistakes. Tip number 1, automate everything. Set up automatic investments into these 4 funds, bi-weekly or monthly, whatever matches your paycheck. This removes the temptation to time the market and forces you to dollar cost average. The people who retire early automated it years ago and forgot about it. Tip number 2, tax-advantaged accounts first. Before you put $1 in a taxable brokerage account, max out your Roth IRA and your 401k. The tax savings alone can add 1 to 2% to your effective annual returns. Over 20 years, that's the difference between $800,000 and $1.1 million on the same contributions. Tip number 3, rebalance once per year maximum. Do not touch this portfolio every time the market moves. Set a calendar reminder for once a year. I do mine every January, and rebalance back to your target allocations. If QQQM ran up to 35%, sell a little and buy more SCHD to get back to 25%. If SCHD dropped to 18%, add to it. Buy low, sell high once a year. Then forget about it. Here's what nobody tells you about early retirement. The strategy isn't complicated. 4 funds, done. What's hard is the psychology. Staying invested when your coworkers are panicking. Not checking your account every day. Trusting the process when you're down 15%. The people who retire early aren't smarter than you. They're not making more money. They're just more disciplined. They set up a boring, proven system and stuck with it for 15, 20, 25 years while everyone else was chasing trends and panicking in crashes. You've got the blueprint now. VOO for foundation, QQQM for growth, SCHD for stability and income, SPMO for momentum and performance. 4 funds that together give you everything you need to potentially retire a decade earlier than your peers. The only question left is, are you actually going to do it? Are you going to set this up this weekend, automate your contributions, and commit to the next 10 to 20 years? Or are you going to watch this video, think that's cool, and then do nothing? In 20 years, you're going to be 20 years older whether you start investing today or not. The only difference is whether you're financially free or still stuck in the 9-to-5 grind wishing you'd started earlier. Don't be the person who looks back with regret. Be the person who looks back with a retirement account that bought you your freedom. Just remember, all the best investors exercise patience, strategy, and most importantly, discipline. These aren't just buzzwords. They're the foundation of every successful investment journey. Warren Buffett didn't become one of the richest people in the world by chasing quick wins every day. He did it by staying the course, even when the market got rocky. Now I want to turn this over to you. What are you guys investing in? Are you in some different index funds? Maybe you're diversifying with different ETFs, or perhaps you found some solid dividend paying stocks that are working for your portfolio. Whether you're going heavy on the S&P 500, spreading across international markets, or mixing in some bond funds for stability, I want to hear it. Drop your picks in the comments so we can compare them. Share what's working, what you're learning, and even what mistakes you've made along the way. This community is all about learning from each other, and there's no better teacher than real experience from real people building their wealth alongside you. And remember, we're not here to brag about overnight successes or chase the latest meme stock. We're here to build sustainable, long-term wealth through smart, consistent investing decisions. This is the Money Introduction channel, where we strive for financial freedom and realistic wealth strategies. For beginners, of course. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join our community of everyday people taking control of their financial future, one investment at a time.